Gohan's voice tore through the air as he cried out for his fallen friend. Piccolo, he's gone, and it's all my fault, Gohan says as he lets out another painstaking cry. You did everything that you could, Gohan. You're not to blame, Goku says, trying to console his son. However, the young Saiyan wouldn't believe any of it as the feelings of grief and guilt began to crush him. Piccolo, Kami, Monaito, Krillin, Yamcha, they're all dead. And the Dragon Balls, Dad, they're gone. What are we going to do? Gohan says as tears fall down his face. Goku grits his teeth knowing that his son was right, but he tells the young Saiyan that it's going to be okay. No, it's not. If only I was strong enough before that monster showed up, this wouldn't have happened. But instead I had to spend 2 years inside of that damn chamber, all while that monster killed our friends. Gohan says as anger begins to set in. Goku reaches out to his son, but Tien rests his hand on Goku's shoulder and tells the warrior that he has to let Gohan grieve. Give him time. Words alone won't heal that wound, Tien says, and Goku gives his son some space. Granola watches as all this unfolds, and a heavy guilt begins to weigh him down. If only he had killed Nezumi when he got the chance. If only he remembered Frieza's orders. If only he had been faster, Granola thinks to himself, and he clenches his fist, angered at his failures. What now? Granola asks, and the Z-Fighters turn their attention to Cerealian. An eerie silence fell over them as no one could give an answer. We train, and get stronger, to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. We can't afford to make any more mistakes, Goku says. Granola and Tien nod their heads, acknowledging and accepting the reality of their situation. Tien, keep an eye on Gohan for me. Granola, Trunks, with me. Goku says as he takes off, and the Cerealians follow suit. While soaring through the skies, Trunks would ask where they were going, to tie up a few loose ends, Goku says, and a few minutes later, they'd land at an empty battlefield. I don't get it. Where exactly are we? Granola says, surveying the area. This is where I fought one of Frieza's men. Looks like he got away, Goku says, gritting his teeth. And Granola stares at the crater created by the impact of Tarbo's ship. The Cerealian would then remember about the warrior that he had left Piccolo to fight alone. Follow me. There's another one, Granola says, and the warriors would make their way to where Togama was. When they arrive, they find the warrior still unconscious. What should we do with him? Trunks asks, and Granola takes aim at Tagoma's head, beginning to charge up a powerful blast. However, before he could fire it, Goku gets in between them. What are you doing? Get out of the way, Granola says, and Goku shook his head. Not like this, Goku says, and Granola's anger would begin to rise. You said we couldn't afford to make any more mistakes, and trust me, leaving one of Frieza's men alive is a mistake, Granola says, and she begins to rise, but before Goku could say anything, Trunks brings both of the warriors' attention to a ship entering Earth's atmosphere. Granola's eyes widen as he suspected that it was another one of Frieza's men. Trunks, keep an eye on this bastard. I'll be back. Granola says he takes off towards where the ship was going to land, and Goku follows suit. When the warriors arrived, the door began to open and two strange men stepped out. It was Jacko and Mirrors. Who are you two? Are you with Frieza? Granola yelled out, aiming at Mirrors' head. Jacko would put his hands up, his sweat begins to bead down his face. No, we were actually sent here to apprehend him, Jacko says, shaking in his boots. Goku and Granola look at one another and inform both of the Galactic Patrolmen that they already took care of him. Oh, thank God, Jacko says as he falls to the ground. This would intrigue Mirrors, and he'd ask the two, what did they do with him? Is he dead? Mirrors would ask, and the two warriors would tell them everything. Immortality, huh? I mean, we had our speculations, but to think that he actually managed to pull it off, Mirrors says, and Granola would finally notice the symbol on their armor. That symbol. I've seen it before. Who are you guys? Granola asks, and Jacko would tell them about the Galactic Patrol, and the other reason that they were here. The Galactic Prison? Well, I guess it's a safer place to keep Frieza than here, Goku says. Yeah, you're right. But the one thing I don't get is why? Why did it take you guys so long to act? Do you know what kind of horrible things that monster was able to do while you guys sat back and did nothing? Granola says as he remembers the death of Monaito, as well as Gohan's grief. Mirrors clenches his fist as he hears this, knowing that he could have prevented this if he didn't have to hide his identity. Jacko would then explain that they wished that they could, but Frieza was too powerful of a foe at the time to deal with, and he'd apologize to Goku and Granola for anyone that they lost. The Cerealian would keep quiet, but he'd understand, and after some time the warriors would hand over a sealed Mafuba container to the Galactic Patrolmen, and they'd bring them over to where Togama was. Frieza's ship detained, check. Frieza and his men captured, check and check. Alright, it's time to get out of here, Jacko says to himself as he begins to head back to his ship. However, before he departs, Mirrors turns to the two warriors and he tosses them a strange device. What's this? Goku asks, inspecting it. If you guys ever need any help, you can contact us on that. We're also looking for strong recruits, so feel free to reach out to us if you guys are interested, Mir says as he heads off in the direction of Jacko's ship, and once there, they depart. After this, Goku, Granola, and Trunks take off for the lookout, and from there, over the next few weeks, Trunks would learn everything he needed to know about the Mafuba, and he'd get some training in with his father, Tien, as well as Goku. Soon after that, the young Cerealian would take off to his timeline to finally put an end to Frieza's tyranny. Over the next 4 years, Goku, Gohan, Tien, and Granola would push themselves harder than they ever had before, in hopes of protecting the ones that they love when the time arises. Age 773. The year of Boo's resurrection. A 6-year-old Trunks would awaken and be met by a peaceful and quiet morning. As the young Saiyan dragged himself out of bed, he made his way to the bathroom in order to brush his teeth. However, before he could grab his toothbrush, the entire house would violently shake. "Dad's at it again," Trunks says, rubbing the tiredness out of his eyes. Within the gravity room, Granola traded blows with Goku. Blood and sweat stained their tattered clothes as the two warriors struggled underneath the weight of their own bodies as they dodged, blocked, and countered each other's attacks. Goku lands a powerful kick that Granola barely blocks, and he gets sent flying back. "Not bad," Granola says with a smile on his face. He then rushed in, throwing a flurry of blows that Goku managed to evade, but Granola would catch the Saiyan off guard, landing a devastating punch straight to the gut. Goku braces himself and takes the attack straight on, and he'd back up to gain some distance. "Yeah, you've gotten pretty good yourself," Goku says, wiping the blood away from his mouth. "So how about it? Let's go all out." This last attack will decide it, Granola says as he awakens his second Cerealian eye. "Only if you can keep up," Goku says as lightning crackles around his body and he lets out a yell, ascending into his Super Saiyan 2 form. Granola smiles and he'd unleash a vicious red aura. Goku's eyes widen and he chuckles. "So that training with Tien finally paid off, huh?" Goku says. "Takes a little getting used to, but I think I got the hang of it," Granola says as sweat beats down his head. He then suddenly vanishes as he kicked up his Kaioken up to ×10, and Goku would frantically look around as he readied himself. Granola would rush in, throwing a powerful punch at blinding speeds at the side of the Saiyan's head. Goku's eyes jumped to where Granola was coming from, and he dodged the Cerealian attack by a hair, and he put all of his strength into a counterattack that struck Granola right across the face, sending him flying into the gravity room's wall. Granola would sit up too exhausted to get to his feet, and Goku walks over to him, extending his hand. "I can tell that you're beat. The Kaioken, the gravity, and those injuries would put a toll on anyone," Goku says. Granola chuckles and grabs the Saiyan's hand, and the two warriors would end their sparring match. "So when's the last time you heard from Tien? I haven't seen him around lately," Goku says as the two walked around Capsule Corp. "Last time I checked, he was training with some strange looking kid with snow white skin," Granola says, and Goku would realize that he was talking about Chaozu. "So, what about Gohan? I haven't heard from him since, well, you know," Granola asks, and Goku would fall silent. "Well, he's gotten better, but I know for a fact that he still hasn't gotten over what happened 4 years ago. I'm afraid that he's gonna let that feeling consume him," Goku says, and Granola gives the Saiyan a puzzling look. "What feeling is that?" "Grief?" Granola asks, and Goku thinks about how Gohan has been over the past couple of years. "No." "Anger," Goku answers. The sky filled with smoke as the world began to burn. Looking around, all that could be seen was fallen warriors, bruised, bloodied, and dead. Frieza's laughter tore through the air and a hand suddenly reached out, grabbing onto whatever it could. Looking down, there was a man with tears filling his eyes as he drew his last breath. "Gohan," Piccolo said. "Gohan," a voice called out, and the young Saiyan would come to, staring blankly at Videl standing right in front of him. "Gohan, are you okay?" Videl asks, waving her hand in front of his face. "Yeah, I'm fine," Gohan says, forcing a smile. Videl would give the young Saiyan a concerned look. Before she could say anything, Sharpener and Eraser joined the conversation, asking Videl if she's going to participate in a world tournament. "Yeah, of course I am. Someone's going to have to dethrone my father eventually," Videl says. "Oh yeah, I always forget that your dad's the reigning champ. What was his name again? Hercules Saiyan or something like that?" Sharpener asks. You see, due to the events of the Cell Saga not happening within this What If, Hercule didn't become a worldwide renowned name like in the original series. "His name is Hercule," Videl says, a little annoyed. She then turned her attention to Gohan. "So what about you? Are you coming?" "I'd appreciate it if you did," Videl says, smiling at the young Saiyan. "I'll have to ask my mom, but I'll definitely try to be there if I can," Gohan says as he begins to walk out of class, waving goodbye to his friends. When he arrives home, he greets his mother, gets into his gi, and immediately makes his way out to go train. "Gohan, have you done your schoolwork?" Chi-Chi asks, and the young Saiyan stops in his tracks. "Yep, I'm ahead by a full semester," Gohan says as he tries to head out again. Chi-Chi smiles and she tells the young Saiyan to take Goten with him. "What? But he's going to slow me down," Gohan says, and his mother gives him a stern look. "Okay, Goten, come on," Gohan yells out, and his younger brother would join him. The two would tear through the sky, landing where Gohan trained with Piccolo all those years ago. "Ready, Goten?" Gohan asks as he takes his battle stance. Goten would smile and ascend into his Super Saiyan form. "You're going all out, huh?" Gohan chuckles, and he'd in return activate his Akari form. "Alright, bring it on," Gohan says, and the two Saiyans rush in and they'd begin their training session. A few hours later, as Gohan easily dodged and blocked his younger brother's attacks, he'd noticed someone watching them, a man in an orange gi bearing the Turtle School symbol. It was Yamcha. The Earthling smiled at Gohan, and as he did this, blood would begin to trickle down his mouth. Gohan's eyes widened, but he'd suddenly be struck across the face by a decently strong punch. "I finally got you," Goten yelled out, excitedly and out of breath. "I guess you did," Gohan says, patting his younger brother on the head. Gohan would then turn his attention to where he saw Yamcha watching him, but to his surprise, the man in the orange gi was none other than his father. "Dad?" Gohan says, and Goku would smile as he watched his two sons finish their training session. "Dad?" Goten asks a bit confused. Gohan would then point to where their father was, and the moment that Goten's eyes met with his father, he'd immediately rush over to him. "Dad!" Goten yelled out, hugging him tightly. Goku would hug his younger son back, and the young Saiyan would go on and on about how all of his training finally paid off. "Did you see? I finally got a hit on Gohan," Goten says. "Yeah, I saw. You're getting stronger every day," Goku says, ruffling Goten's hair. Gohan watches the two celebrate it, and he cracked a smile. Goku would then approach his son. "Haven't seen you all day. Figured I'd check in on you. How are you holding up?" Goku asks, and Gohan would look at his father as he recalled the two visions he had earlier. "I'm fine. Just thought that I'd get ahead of my training today," Gohan says, and Goku gives the young Saiyan a concerned look. "Are you sure? I know how you get around this time of year," Goku says. The young Saiyan would then look to Goten, who had been distracted by the wildlife. "It's not as bad as it used to be, but the thought of losing anybody else still scares me," Gohan says. Goku would rest his hand on Gohan's shoulder, and he let out a sigh. "Yeah, me too. I guess I never realized how easy the Dragon Balls made things until they were gone," Goku says, recalling all the times that he revived his fallen friends, and before he could say anything, he'd feel Goten tug at his leg, asking him if they can go home to eat. Goku chuckles and tells the young Saiyan that they'd leave in a moment. He then turns his attention to Gohan. "Well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing better. Remember to cut yourself some slack if things get tough. I mean, after all, without you, the rest of us wouldn't be here right now. I don't know if focusing on that helps, but I hope it does," Goku says he picked up Goten, ready to head home. "What were you guys talking about?" Goten asked cluelessly. Goku would smile at his son, and he'd then tell him that they were just talking about grown-up stuff. Gohan watches as his father and Goten take off, and he'd think about what Goku told him. But he'd suddenly remember something important. "Oh crap, I forgot to ask about the tournament," Gohan says to himself as he begins to head home. On the day of the tournament, Gohan, Sharpner, and Eraser watched from the crowd. You see, due to the lack of Z fighters, as well as Tien and Granola not being interested in such an event, none of them would participate, not even Gohan. The young Saiyan was simply there to support his friend. As the tournament progressed, Gohan, Sharpner, and Eraser cheered on Videl as she took down each and every single one of her opponents. That wasn't until she faced off against Spopovich. However, unlike in the original series, this fight wouldn't last as long as Gohan's anger wouldn't allow him to see anyone harm someone he cared about in such a cruel manner, and the moment that things got out of hand, he'd immediately rush onto the stage, throwing a powerful punch that would knock Spopovich out. He'd then grab onto Videl, who was still suffering from the intense injuries, and he'd call out her name, but she wouldn't answer. His anger would begin to rise, and whilst the Saiyan was distracted with Videl, as well as his emerging anger, Yamcha would use that time to sneak up and stab him with the energy suction device. Gohan immediately turned around, his eyes meeting with Yamu's, and he removed the device from his side. "Are you with him?" Gohan asks, gesturing towards the unconscious Popovich, and Yamcha took a step back in fear of his life. But Babidi would command the Earthling to absorb his energy. If someone was easily able to dismantle Spopovich, then they must have an exceptional amount of Kili. So if you want to continue living your pathetic life, I'd advise you do your job, Babidi yelled out. After hearing this, Yamcha would shake off his fear and he'd throw a punch towards the young Saiyan, and it connects. But to his surprise, it doesn't do anything. Yamcha would then look at Gohan as the Saiyan's eyes turn from black to yellow. Yamcha would jump back, and Gohan raises his hand and begins to charge up a Ki Blast. With no way of winning, Yamcha immediately turns around and grabs onto Spopovich, taking off. However, before the two could even leave the tournament, their heads would explode. Gohan and the rest of the crowd watches as this unfolds, and shock and panic would rush throughout the crowd and everyone would begin to run for their lives, whilst Gohan was left utterly confused. He then turns his attention to the energy suction device that Yamcha had stabbed him with, and he'd see the same strange M symbol that both Spopovich and Yamcha had on their heads. "What you're looking at is known as the Majin symbol," a voice said to the young Saiyan. Gohan would look around and he'd see two strange men with white hair, the Supreme Kai and Kobito. But what does it mean? And why was it engraved on those two's heads? Gohan asks, and the Supreme Kai would tell the Saiyan about Babidi and his plan to revive Buu. "I had originally intended on letting them take your energy so that we could learn the location of Babidi, but it seems as if I underestimated how strong you were," Shin says. "Well, there has to be another way to track them down. They can't keep getting away with hurting people." Gohan says he turns his attention to Videl, and Shin would apologize, telling him that there isn't another way. And the young Saiyan clenched his fist as the thought of another monster taking the life of the people he cared about ran through his mind. However, before he could say anything, he senses a menacing Ki arrive above the tournament stage. Gohan would look at Kibito and Shin as they look above the Saiyan in horror. "So you're the Earthling that Babidi is so interested in. You don't look like much." But to be fair, looks can be deceiving, a voice said. "Deborah!" Shin and Kibito yell out, and Gohan turns his attention towards the Demon King. "Let me guess, you're here to finish what those two couldn't," Gohan says, sizing Deborah up, and the Demon King cracks a smile. "Observant, aren't you?" Deborah says, and Gohan would then look to Shin and Kibito, remembering what their plan was in order to stop the wizard Babidi. "How about this? You tell me where your boss is, and I'll make sure that when I kill you it'll be quick," Gohan says. The young Saiyan would then power up into his Super Saiyan form. Shin, Kibito, and Deborah would all be taken aback by the fact that the Earthling was able to muster up even more power. Deborah would smile, and he'd then think to himself that Gohan should be more than enough to revive Boo. Gohan would then tell Shin and Kibito to take Videl to a safe place so that she didn't get caught up in the upcoming fights. And Kibito nods his head, picking the unconscious warrior up. "Watch out for his spit, it turns whatever or whoever it touches into stone," Shin says as Deborah touches down on the tournament stage. Gohan would look back to him, acknowledging the information. "I hope that's not all your strength that I'm sensing, because if it is, this won't take too long," Deborah says. Gohan would immediately rush in, going for a powerful punch, and Deborah smiles, thinking to himself that the young Saiyan was far too slow. However, before the attack lands, Gohan vanishes and appears right in front of the Demon King within an instant, his eyes glowing an eerie yellow color, and he'd land a punch so powerful that it crushes Deborah into the tournament stage. The demon would cough up blood, but he'd immediately recover and gain some distance from the young Saiyan. "What was that?" Deborah says as he wipes some blood away from his face. "It's like I said," Gohan says, appearing behind the Demon King. Deborah would immediately turn around, launching a full-powered blast, and Gohan's hand shoots out through the attack, grabbing Deborah by the face. He then tear through the Ki blast and take off with Deborah in hand, and while soaring through the sky, Deborah would manifest his sword and take a swing at Gohan, causing the Saiyan to let go of him. However, before Deborah could recover, Gohan would go on the offensive, attacking the Demon King mercilessly, and Deborah could do nothing as each of Gohan's attacks landed with incredible speed, power, and accuracy. As the Saiyan lands another skull-crushing attack, Deborah would think to himself, "How could an Earthling be this powerful? If this continues, he'll kill me." And after a few more strikes, Gohan would throw a punch that sent the Demon King flying into a nearby mountain. "It's like I said, it's your choice if you want a slow and painful death, but I could just put you out of your misery. All you have to do is tell me where Babidi is," Gohan says, and the Demon King would cough up blood, barely even conscious, but he wouldn't answer. Instead, he tried to turn the young Saiyan into stone with his spit. Gohan easily dodged it and goes in for another attack, and Deborah would try to block it, but the bones in his arms would shatter the moment that Gohan's attack made contact, and he let out a blood-curdling scream. However, Gohan would immediately shut him up by grabbing the Demon King by the throat and starting to suffocate him. "I said talk," Gohan says. Deborah would try to gasp for air, and he looked the Saiyan in his eyes. He was cold, calculated, and ruthless. And as Babidi watched all this unfold, he'd smile. "Deborah, bring him to my location," Babidi says. "But my lord," Deborah says. But Babidi would immediately tell him to do as he's told, and the Demon King says that he will show him where Babidi was. "I just need his location. I don't need you," Gohan says. Babidi would begin to laugh, amused by the Saiyan's demeanor. "Oh, he'll do nicely. Deborah, give him my location," Babidi says, and Deborah would begin to sweat. However, he'd do as he's told. Gohan would look in the direction of where the wizard was, and Deborah immediately spat at him in a last-ditch effort to defeat him. But Gohan dodged it, and with a single Ki blast, he'd eviscerate the Demon King. Moments later, Shin and Kibito arrive on the battlefield, and they'd look around trying to find both the Saiyan and the Demon King. "The Earthling, he already left," Kibito says, looking in the direction of where he sensed Gohan. Shin acknowledged Kibito, but his attention would be pulled to a shattered sword. It was Deborah's, and next to it was scorched earth. "Kibito," Shin says, inspecting the battlefield, and Kibito would look to where Deborah spent his last moments. "That Earthling, something's off about him. I've never felt so much hate, anger, and pain coming from one being," Shin says. However, his attention would be directed to two people arriving on the scene. It was Goku and Granola. Over with Gohan, as he tore through the sky at top speed, he'd begin to remember his fallen friends, how he wasn't there to protect them when Frieza killed them, and how weak he felt before the Tyrant's arrival, and even after when Piccolo died. "It'll be different this time. I'm stronger. I'm ready. I'll protect everyone, and I'll kill any bastard that tries to hurt them," the young Saiyan says, clenching his fists. A moment later, Gohan would come to a screeching halt as he arrived at the area that Deborah had told him about. He looked around for the entrance to Babidi's ship, but he wouldn't see anything. That isn't until the wizard revealed it himself, and not wasting any time, Gohan jolted towards the entrance and he'd made his descent. Landing on the first floor, the Saiyan makes note that the room was pitch black, but that wouldn't stop him from looking around for the wizard. So, you decided to come after all, and you came alone. Good, Babidi says as a smile forms across his face. Show yourself, Gohan yells out, looking around trying to pinpoint the wizard's whereabouts. Now why would I do that? You bested my best servant, and now it seems as if I'm in need of another one, and I think that you do nicely. Babidi says he begins to cast the Majin spell. What are you talking about? Stop wasting my time, Gohan says. Moments later, the young Saiyan would feel a cold, sharp pain piercing through his head as Babidi's laughter filled the air. Gohan lets out a painstaking yell as he falls to the floor. A cold and calculated warrior on the surface, but a fractured mind lays beneath. Babidi says he begins to comb through Gohan's mind, and the young Saiyan thrashed around as the pain was unbearable. Get out of my head, Gohan yelled out over and over again, but he'd only be met by silence. That wasn't until he heard a familiar voice. Gohan, a voice says, and when the young Saiyan turns around, the pain subsides and the pitch black room turns into a destroyed battlefield, and Gohan comes face to face with Piccolo. No. You're not real, Gohan says, taking a step back. Gohan, why? Piccolo asks, as blood trickled down his mouth. Gohan took a step back trying to remain calm, but he tripped over something. A familiar body, bloodied and bruised. Gohan would shuffle back in fear, watching as Piccolo took a step forward, and he'd feel another sharp pain in his head. Where were you when we needed you the most? Piccolo says, as Frieza's laughter began to fill the air. Gohan began to look around, panicked and confused. Around the Saiyan lay the bodies of his friends and allies, Yamcha, Krillin, Piccolo, and Kami. They all begin to frantically grab at Gohan as he shifted backwards trying to escape their grasp. They yell, calling out his name, blaming him for their deaths. If only you were stronger, then none of us would have died. If only you were faster, then maybe the Dragon Balls would still be here. If only you were ready, then none of this would have happened. No, I tried to save you all. I tried, Gohan says, and you feel another cold, sharp pain piercing through his head. You failed, Gohan heard in his own voice, and he suddenly heard the voices of his fallen allies getting louder, and Frieza's laughter boomed through the air even more. The Saiyan would cover his ears and begin to hyperventilate as the cold hands of his late friends began to grab onto him. Gohan would try to tear them off, but it was no use. With each hand that grabbed him, he felt his strength waning. Eventually they began to drag him down into the ground below, and as the Saiyan succumbed to his fear, suddenly vivid visions of Chi-Chi, Goku, Goten, and everyone else he held dear being slayed by Frieza ran through his head over and over again. Seconds turned to minutes, minutes turned to hours, hours turned to days, and so on and so forth, until the young Saiyan nearly went mad. Please, just make it stop, he said over and over again, and a tear would fall down the warrior's face. Over with Goku and Granola, the two warriors tore through the sky alongside Shin and Kibito, and they'd all eventually land at where they last sensed Gohan, but to their surprise nothing was there. This doesn't make any sense. How could his key signature disappear so quickly? Granola says, looking around, and Shin would tell him that it's probably one of Babidi's tricks. He's always been good at hiding. It's the reason we needed such a convoluted plan to find him in the first place, Shin says, and as they all look around, the entrance of Babidi's ship would appear. There, Kibito says as he rushes to make his way to the entrance before he disappears. However, the moment he reached the doorway, his eyes would widen as a hand grabbed him by the throat, and out of Babidi's entrance emerged Gohan. Gohan! What are you doing? Goku yelled out, and the young Saiyan would turn to face his father and the others, and on his head burned the Majin mark. And with that, this marks the end of this part. Thank you to everyone that watched this video. I hope you all have a great day. Peace, deuce.